So tonight is the final speaker session in our creativity month. Last week we had, for those that weren't here, the One-Handed Musical Instrument Trust that came to speak to us about the world of music. And this evening we are very lucky and privileged to have Jonathan Bryan joining us with Chantal and oh my gosh, I've forgotten how to pronounce the name. Alaric, thank you. Joining us this evening. I'm just going to give you a little bit of background about this amazing young gentleman. So when Jonathan was 7, he was removed from his special school for a few hours a day to be taught to read and write by his mum, Chantal. And after a year and a half, had learnt enough to spell out everything he wanted to write and say using his eyes to choose letters on an alphabet board held in front of him while recovering from a serious illness at age 10. Jonathan felt God had given him some extra time so he could try and make a difference for children like him in education. During the summer of 2016, Jonathan started an online campaign for all children to be taught to read and write regardless of their educational label, which has now gained 750,000 signatures. It led to a meeting with the minister responsible for special education, which was recorded as part of a CBBC My Life documentary, which followed Jonathan for a few months in late 2016 and included his confirmation service. In 2018, he doesn't stop, this guy. His memoir, I Can Write, was published, and many people have contacted him to say it's changed their attitude to non-verbal people, and teachers have told him it has changed the education of their students. Jonathan's portion of the profits from the book go to his charity, Teach Us Too, extending the work started by his campaign with the charity. Jonathan spreads the message of Teach Us Too by speaking at universities, events and schools, and events like ours to educate students, professionals, teachers, and the wider public. In 2022, this year, Jonathan was awarded part of the Disability Power 100 Rising Stars. And we are, again, very pleased that Jonathan, together with his mum, Chantal, and his friend Ansel, are joining us to explore creativity through words in tonight's Midweek Matters. Thank you so much, guys, and I'll hand it over to you.
My name is Jonathan, and I am 15 years old.
So that was Jonathan using his iBoard. It's slightly outdated because Jonathan's almost 17, like me. My name's Alaric, and I'm basically here to talk on behalf of Jonathan because he's unable to himself. So from here on in, anything that I say is Jonathan's words, not mine.
And anything I say will be Jonathan's words and not mine. We're just splitting it between us because there's quite a lot to say.
Okay.
I'm just going to pause a minute. I'm going to see if I can do it so I don't have to lean over everything to press the next slide. Hang on.
It's been a slightly hectic evening.
Absolutely fine.
Does this work?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, cool. Sorry. We thought we had it all working. We did have it all working before it came, but this will make it slightly easier.
Thank you for inviting me here to share something of my love for writing. Like many of you here today, I also have cerebral palsy, which I've had since birth. Most of the predictions about my physical disabilities and health given to my parents have come true. I can't walk or talk and have a transplanted kidney. Here is how I introduce this in my book.
Listening, looking, and waiting to be heard. I spent the first part of my childhood unable to tell my story. In silence, I lived behind the labels. Labels attached to my dysfunctional body, severe cerebral palsy, profound and multiple learning difficulties, non-verbal, chronic lung disease, curved spine, transplanted kidney, hearing loss, squint, short stature, deranged liver. Even my teeth have a disability. For all of my 8 years, these labels have defined me. Expectations founded on my outward appearance. But more than the rest, the silence. Shrouding my personality, silence suffocated my identity, my very being sealed shut. With my loves, passions, dislikes, and sharp mind, deadened in the soundless void. I couldn't even tell you my name.
By far, the most restricted label I have had the misfortune to be yoked with is profound and multiple learning disabilities, or PMLD for short. In special school, this meant I was given a sensory curriculum and not taught to read or write, as there was no belief or expectation that I would ever be able to do it. When I was seven, Marianne Stanton of Kindle suggested to my mother that she should teach me to read and write at home. And after 1.5 years, I'd got to the point where I could spell out what I wanted to write.
That's a video of Marion teaching Jonathan when he was learning to spell. I think he was spelling Pat in that video. Oh, right. Yeah.
When people find out I didn't communicate until I was 9, they imagine it must have been very frustrating not to be able to chat. There were things that irked me a lot more than not having a conversation. In particular, people talking to me as if I didn't understand. In my book, I tried to describe what this is like.
Imagine the voice used to talk to a baby. High-pitched, excitable, slightly louder than usual. Mix that with how you talk to a foreigner with little understanding of the language. Slow, loud, and clear, with short sentences and no complicated words. You are now close to speaking special.
For me, the joy of being able to write surpasses being able to have a chat. Learning to spell and use my Perspex spelling board was a slow and tortuous business, as I had to work out what combination of letter and colour squares made up each letter. Here is a film which explains how my spelling board works.
This board that has changed my life is actually really simple. If I wanted to say the word hi, I would look at the grid the H is in. Because the H is highlighted in green, I would then look at the green square above it. My communication partner would then sound out H. Next, I look at the grid the I is in, and as that letter is highlighted in red, I would look at the red square. My communication partner would say hi, and to confirm that they've got it right, I would then look at the tick box.
Oh, sorry.
On top of this, I was also trying to remember how to spell the words I had read and wanted to replicate. Prior to this, I'd been shown a selection of letters and been told what to spell. But now I had the whole alphabet in front of me, and I could potentially spell out any word I wanted. But I hate getting things wrong. So for days and weeks, I had the alphabet board sat on the desk while I chose to write stories using the method we had devised. I would choose the next word of my writing from a selection offered to me. The trouble was, the word I was thinking of was often not an option presented to me. Irritating. One day, frustration and my desire to extend my vocabulary past key stage 1 overwhelmed my fear of spelling incorrectly. Here's a section of my book in which I explain what happened next, read by Michael Morpurgo, who wrote the foreword for my book.
Now, the study board, Sarah, who is my teacher, her finger pointed where my eyes were looking. Sitting on his lap, it remained still. Sarah's finger danced to the rhythm of my eye. Following my lead, we slow walked around the board, synchronized to the music of the word in my head. First, we were like clumsy teenagers trying to learn. Low and stilted. Jonathan, today you've written, hired from slaying the ship's enemies they pose. What do you want to write next? He had already been surprised by the word slaying, as it wasn't even an option in the verb section of a black folder. Duet continued. But the process was so exacting, tiring, because I wanted to draw out the suspense. I closed my eyes. The usual started to enjoy the ensuing conversation. Did he put a space? He was also typing what I wrote into the computer. He hasn't yet, but I expect he will. He opens up again. I think what else he would be right, beginning. There obviously had no idea of the word I was crafting. Before they started chatting again, a fate of the near obsolete folder that brimmed with many hours of their dedicated input, I opened up, ready for play to commence. By particular in each letter of the word, but Sarah was so engrossed in mirroring my eyes with her finger, she had lost the word. Sarah, who stared back at her, there excited, heralding the beginning of the end of mine. It took Mummy one more day to realize that now I could spell if I wanted to write.
It was my love of writing. Oh, sorry. Have we got any questions so far?
No.
No?
Okay.
It was my love of writing which unlocked my voice. So, why do I write? Here is an extract from my book about writing.
Spelling and writing is slow and intentional. Giving voice to my thoughts is a measured activity. For writing, this means sitting in the moment I'm describing, seeing it, hearing it, feeling it. Words swirl onto the page, portraying the experience to be relived by my reader. Words that need shepherding, culling, matching before being committed to a piece. It is my challenge to delicately capture the image and bequeath it words that let it breathe. Like a bird let out of its cage, The picture that words can generate is free to fly in my reader's mind and assume a new life of its own.
So we've got a question for you guys now. Why do you write?
Do you want to take the PowerPoint down for a second, and then we can all kind of be in the same room together? Would that be okay, Chantal? That's it. I think that, and then we can all see each other as well.
So I'll go first. The reason, Jonathan, that I spend my time writing lately is to write emails and communications to other people who don't live close to me.
I'll go next. Oh no, hang on, Seth. I don't know whether you can put your voice on, if you want to say it instead, Seth. Because you're on mute at the moment. No microphone. So Seth says he writes for his employer. I'll go next. I haven't for quite a long time, but I used to actually, when I was a little bit older than you, Jonathan, I used to write a lot of poetry, and I found it a really good way of trying to get my emotions out on paper. They were very teenage angst poems, and your literacy level is much higher than mine was at that age. But it was really cathartic for me, and it was fun to find the rhythm in the words, but in a short way. Dean.
Yeah, thank you. Yes, I like Miriam and Emma have said. You know, I write. Well, I write letters. But
Put yourself on mute, Dean. Sorry.
Sorry. I was getting in good flow then. You know. Yeah. Sorry. Yeah. I like Miriam said. I write mainly emails to kind of express how I'm feeling about, or write letters, or write notes to people, and just generally letting them know how I am, or to express how I'm feeling. Which I think from the words that are that have been read from your book, Jonathan, you know, they're important to you, aren't they? So, and I guess I just communicate like we all do as well, you know, and write, you know, that's the reason I write.
And Georgia said that she's writing for her English. What exam are you doing, Georgia?
She's doing English language GCSE currently.
Can you write, Tony? I can see you smiling.
Yeah, well, I like everyone else. I write emails, but I also like writing when I don't quite understand something. Words help me to clarify my thoughts, and if one is dealing with a difficult subject, quite often trying to express it can be very helpful and very frustrating as well when I don't quite find the right words.
Thank you. Jamie, did you want to share?
I write to communicate the same as you.
Very reliant on writing, aren't you, Jamie? And Mandy, your hand keeps going up and down, so I'm not sure. Did you?
Yeah, I'm not good with technology, as I say every week.
That's fine.
But like you, when I went to mainstream school, even though they said I couldn't, but I couldn't write because my coordination was so bad, and it took me a year or maybe longer to learn to write my name. And when everybody else was moving forward with their own education, I was still doing up and down, like V shapes and tracing. And they said, "Oh, you'll never write, you'll never write." But eventually, by the time I got to the end of primary school, I could write as good as anyone else. And then I went to high school, and it wasn't a problem. And I love to write, actually, and I write lots of things. Now I mostly write to help my daughter with her homework, but and I thought it would never be a skill that I would have, but now my family will say that I'm probably the neatest writer in my whole family. And when my father's dyslexic, and when he needs anything wrote down, it's always me that does it. So it just shows you that when people say you can't do something, it's not always true. But thanks for sharing.
Before we hand back to Jonathan, does anyone else want to share when they write? Okay, so we'll Jamie, is that a historic hand, or did you have something else to say? Is it a historic hand? Okay.
I think Ruth Ann's got a hand up.
Sorry, I missed that on my screen. Thanks, Becky.
Well, right now I've got a cold, so it might sound a bit weird, but I write to just express myself.
Brilliant. And do you do that in a diary or in letters or on email?
Yeah, sometimes on the spare paper.
And Katie shared in the chat. So Katie shared that she, to get through life, she uses writing. Brilliant. So I think we can hand back to you, Jonathan.
Thank you for sharing. Thank you. That's great. Oh yes, well done.
Well, what Jonathan said is this.
Yeah.
Why does anyone write? Verbal or non-verbal? What you have a passion and interest in should always form the basis of what you write. In writing, we discover new things about ourselves and others. In observing the world around us through a writer's lens, we see things that others miss. Having been in a wheelchair all my life, I've watched and observed more than if I'd been active. And as I sit, I view life around me and pray I notice things that others might miss. When I'm planning a story, I'm arranging my thoughts to fit the structure. Then, when I write, I use the plan to shape where my story is going. But often, the writing takes its own course, diverging from the planning and careering off on a path of its own making. Following it, as it twists and turns, I concentrate on crafting each sentence in the best way I can. Everything I learned about what makes good writing comes from extensive reading and listening to literature in my primary school English classes. Out of my joy in life comes my sense of humour, and I love thinking of witty comments to make people laugh. Because when people chuckle, their whole countenance brightens. I must say, Jonathan's good at using long words, which comes at the price of me trying to say them. Planning used to be the bane of my English lessons. This is an extract from my book on planning.
Annoyingly, my teacher Sarah was making me write a story map. Oh, is it not working? Is it not plugged in? No. In a bid to make this activity more fun, the plan was disguised as a mountain, not a small hill, but a steep, craggy mountain struggling to be constrained within an A3 piece of paper. Every face of this edifice needed filling in with tedious detail of each scene, while the story was bursting to be let out of the confines of my brain.
When I could spell to speak, I could tell Sarah and Mummy how I wanted to plan. It wasn't story mountains. Now I plan using spider diagrams for stories and word spirals for poems. Here's my spider diagram for chapter 8 of my book. When I'm planning a story, I'm arranging my thoughts to fit into the structure. Then, when I write, I use the plan to shape where my story is going. Halfway through year 5 in English, I was introduced to poetry for the first time. At last, here was a genre that didn't disadvantage my slow speed, where I could play with the sound and meaning of words to create pictures and emotions, where the perfect fit was the only fit. So this question goes to you guys. What is poetry for you? Yeah.
Does anybody want to kick off this discussion?
It's a very in-depth question.
Oh, you're on mute again, Dean.
Yeah, I keep doing that. It's a very in-depth question, that, Jonathan. And to be honest, I don't know where to start.
I'll start if no one else. While you're waiting, Dean, while you're thinking about it.
Yeah, go on. Yeah.
I like Mandy, although I don't have cerebral palsy, I do have dyslexia, and but I also really love music, and I think for me the poetry is the rhythm and the music as well as the visual images that they create, and even as some of your really short poems, that one of them we posted at the beginning of the week, it just creates the image within 5 lines. I know I can see it, and that's for me, the power is for the poet to be able to transform the writer to where they're wanting to take them. So that's for poetry for me. That's about the rhythm, the music, the imagery, and the power of the poet being able to take the reader there.
Hello. Tony. Oh, sorry, Lindsay, you go next.
Hello, everybody. Sorry, you can only see half the face. I've got a wheelchair, so I've got a different position. What I was about to say is poetry is the world around me and all the people where I get inspiration from, and it's lovely to be here and listen to your talk. Thank you very much.
Thank you for being here too, Lindsay. It's lovely to see you. Sorry, Tony, did you have your hand up?
Yes. When I was at school, writing was physically very hard work, and so was speaking. And I never liked language at school. I liked reading, but I was very bad at English. I failed my English O-level. But when I started working after I had university, I realized how important it was to be able to use words well. and I realised I needed to improve my speech. And I read a wonderful book by someone called Cicely Berry, who was the voice director at the Royal Shakespeare Company. And she got people to use poetry to work on their voice. And after reading that book, I fell in love with poetry because it was so wonderful to learn the words and to discover that I could use my voice through the poetry to express my own feelings. And that was very liberating for me. And it made me realize how wonderful language was and how wonderful it was to work with language and what a precious thing words are. So after that, I really loved poetry. I loved learning poetry, and I loved the process of having to say the words, having learned the poem, because that for me was very liberating. It gave me far more confidence in my own voice and in the way that I was able to express things.
Phenomenal. Thank you for sharing, Tony. Absolutely phenomenal. Dean, you've had some thoughts that you want to share.
I have. Do you know something? And when Miriam said what she said about music, and that's exactly what I wanted. That was similar to what I wanted to say, but it didn't sound right. But I guess it's true because I like music, and the thing is, it's the lyrics of the song can sometimes be like poetry. If you take the music away and just read the lyrics alone, and that can become that can be like a poem, and it can help you to figure out some in life generally. It can help you figure out problems, and it's happened to me before where I've looked at the lyrics of a song and it's helped me think a way around the particular problem. Also, likewise with Tony, I was the other way. Tony's good at music, I believe, and I was bad at music but good at English at school, and I felt very bad at being with being at a school that was very good on very at the top of its game in music. That was all. I always felt a bit, that always made me feel a bit not as confident. Not it didn't give me very much. It dented my confidence a bit in school. But what you're not good at in one way, you have we all have things that we are good at. So yeah. But it was yeah. So that's basically what poetry means to me, and yeah. Thank you.
Does anybody else want to add anything? I think I've told you all the story of my recent experience with poetry as part of a research project, using poetry to explain what some of the issues are for somebody living with a disability and how policy impacts our lives. And it was done in a form of a poem. And I have to admit that I was a little skeptical when we started the process, but the impact of both writing the poem and then having it performed with an animator who'd drawn some pictures to go with the words, and then showing it to a group of people who hadn't had an experience of living with a disability, how impactful that piece was in very, very quickly sharing with others feelings, emotions, and experiences, and allowed them to walk in somebody else's shoes really, really quickly. So I'm a little bit of a changed person when it comes to the power of poetry. I was quite astounded. I've learned quite a lot in the process. So I'm a big advocate of poetry at the moment. Shall we hand back to Jonathan? Is that okay with you guys?
Thank you all for sharing. That's great. I should say that Jonathan shuts his eyes when he's listening. So if he shuts his eyes, it's just he sometimes struggles to look and listen. So yeah, he's got them open now because he doesn't want to listen to me. Right, there we are. Thank you all for sharing. That was really interesting.
Oh gosh. Okay.
We don't know where we are, but there we are. Okay.
Poetry lives within me. It is the music of my mind, the rhythm of my heart, the outward expression of my soul. Ideas for poems form deep within me, and when the kernel of an idea has formed, it swells until I'm ready to put pen to paper, or eye to spelling board in my case, and plan. Here's a poem I wrote for primary age children on what a poem is.
Freshly fallen snow waiting for my prince to explore, my eyes dancing a pattern with a song to make you soar, to far off lands in your mind where imagination flows, crafting pictures to come alive where understanding grows. Like melting rich dark chocolate on the tip of my tongue to taste, describing life's full flavour with every word that's placed. Thesaurus mined for treasure, from deep wells of language drawn, sculpted with rhyme and rhythm, and so a new poem is born.
There's no right or wrong way to plan poetry. Everyone does it in a different way. How I plan changes depending on what I write. Often for my poetry, I sit and experience the different emotions and senses that I associate with the subject. For some poems, I heighten my senses as I physically sit in the space I'm writing about and put down words to describe what I was feeling, seeing, hearing, smelling. For much of my poetry, I imagine scenes unfolding and describing what they're like. Every word that comes to mind is written on a blank piece of paper, and often, once the paper is full, I find the poem has almost written itself. Here's the planning for a poem about my faith and the pictures which came into my head. So this is a picture of Jonathan's planning for this poem.
Actually typed up. I usually write it in my writing and he has to try and decipher it afterwards. And this is the poem that came out of it. The author of life, beauty breathing through my soul, cradling arms, tending my frail frame, sheltering rock whilst life's storms rage, dancing with quaver beats of joy, anticipating love's beckon, home in the garden forever.
For some of my poetry, I take inspiration from the poets who have gone before me. William Blake's The Tiger, Brian Bilston's ingenious backwards poem, Refugees, and Michael Morpurgo's poem about a robin coming home. In this next poem, I copied the style of Roald Dahl's revolting rhymes, and for this, I need a different sort of planning with a beginning, middle, and end.
So there's the planning for this poem, and this one's a bit longer. I'm going to have to get a bit closer to the screen to read it, but I'll read this one. Rumpelstiltskin. The tale of Rumpelstiltskin tells of how men use their little girls to harness some financial gain and rid themselves of the dire pain of finding a suitable man to wed their daughters. Here's the plan. The miller lies, the miller cheats, My daughter spins pure gold in sheaths. The king heard this as he rode by. I need this woman to be my treasurer, spin gold, fill my bank. If she does this, the highest rank of queen, my wife will all be hers. But if he lies, she will incur my wrath poured out on severed head. Thus our heroine, full of dread, waved goodbye to evil father, for certain death ever after. Locked in a room with spinning wheel and enough straw for a cow's meal, she dissolves into distraught tears when suddenly an imp appears. My dear, he said with such aplomb, brought up properly at Eton, dry your eyes on my handkerchief. What I perform is past belief. She sat snivelling in the corner. Reader, how shall we forewarn her? For whilst he spun the straw to gold, his real intention was foretold by the smooth leer upon his lips. Calamitous relationships followed him where'er he travelled, as quickly his charm unravelled. Delighted with the pure gold pile, she gave her necklace with a smile. The king, with pound signs in his eyes, places more straw to her surprise. This time she calls out for her friend, who saves her from her sticky end. With love bursting within her heart, her precious ring she did impart. As a sign of her intention, he accepts for his deception. The king is greedy through and through and demands one last revenue. The imp returns, she's a flutter. What he demands makes her shudder. Her firstborn son is all he wants, despite her imploring response. So now she's married to the king, proud mother to her first offspring. Imagine her immense surprise when imp returns to claim his prize. You all know the story from here. 3 days for his name to appear. She gets it on the final night. His anger drove her from her sight. But what, dear reader, is never told, how this encounter made her bold to leave the king and start afresh, caring for children in a creche, where she tells her favourite story, her triumph over men in glory.
I am allergic to using the same word more than once in a passage,
Although there's quite a few in this.
and spend a considerable amount of time in the thesaurus. Experimenting with new words is fun, and although I do not speak aloud, I love the sound and sense each word contributes. When I'm reading or listening to a story, I bank any interesting words in my head to be used later in my writing. Sometimes the word I try is totally inappropriately filed, and after I've looked it up in the dictionary, it's taken out of the piece and recategorized. It is this love of language which feeds my poetry.
Oh no. Okay. What motivates me?
What motivates me? There's another really important reason that I write. As a non-verbal child who's been taught to read and write, it is my responsibility to speak up for children like me who have not been taught literacy, because based on their outward physical disabilities, people have decided that they do not have the capacity to learn. For those of us who are non-speaking, we are voices for the voiceless. Poetry is succinct. For example,
I think there's a poem here. So we put this in, Jonathan put this in quite late, which is why it just says poetry is succinct, for example. But this is a poem that he wrote called The Space Next to Me. And I think it sort of ties, this is me talking, not Jonathan. It sort of ties, Emma, a little bit with what you were saying, because this is shared by one of his old teachers is doing a PhD in bereavement in PMLD children and young people. And some people deny that they can sort of experience bereavement in the same way. And of course, sadly, for children with PMLD, they're more likely to be bereaved in terms of their classmates passing away. So this is a poem that he wrote. Sorry, Jonathan, that was all my words and not yours. But this is Jonathan's words now. The space next to me, Our classmate passed away last night. We have no language for our loss. Registers pause. Curtains block light. Our classmate passed away last night. Adults say, everything's all right. Who is next? My friends look across. Our classmate passed away last night. We have no language for our loss.
We are in a very unique situation because we observe more than we speak. Society can learn from us. Throughout my life, stories have been my escape. Stories have been my enjoyment. But our stories can change lives. Stories of how we communicate, stories of how we see the world, and stories of how our voices became unlocked can change the outcomes for those who don't yet have their voice. As disabled people, we can use our writing to show our readers a different perspective, a narrative on our lives. It's for this reason I started Teach Us Too. My prayer is that my book, I Can Write, will challenge assumptions based on outward appearances, something I've continued to campaign about, that all children should be taught to read and write, regardless of their label. So now I leave you with my Thinking Out of the Box poem.
Thinking out of the box. You can't include me. So don't ever pretend my contribution is valuable and that society is richer in diversity. Because I know my disability is awkward to accommodate. It is too much trouble. I bring nothing but hassle. I won't believe a can-do attitude can change anything. This is a reverse poem. I will now read it from the bottom line up. A can-do attitude can change anything. I won't believe I bring nothing but hassle. It is too much trouble. My disability is awkward to accommodate. Because I know society is richer in diversity and that my contribution is valuable. So don't ever pretend that you can't include me.
I think there's another one.
Is that?
Yeah. I think.
Oh.
Not the one next slide. Oh. There we are. Sorry, I thought that is the end.
I think you've left us all a little bit speechless with that poem, Jonathan. Pardon the pun. Thank you very, very, very much for that really insightful poetry and insight into your world. My brain is working overtime at trying to kind of think about it all. We did say that we would see if anybody had any questions. Are you okay with that, Jonathan?
Yeah.
And
we could change things around this way, but yeah, that's something else. Yes.
Sorry, just having a bit of a rejig.
I'll sit where you are.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Right.
So
question ready now.
Right. Mandy, your hand. Oh, it did go. Is that a hand up or a wave? It's a hand up. I'm going to spotlight you for everyone so that you can ask your question, and I'm going to spotlight.
I just wanted to ask, is Jonathan's books on Kindle? Is it on Kindle? I Can Write.
Is it on Kindle?
Kindle.
It's on Kindle. Yes, it's on Kindle. It's I can put a link for it in the chat if you want. You can get it from Amazon, and Amazon have put it on Kindle. Sadly, we did ask for them to do a audiobook. Jonathan listens to a lot of audiobooks, and they did ask Michael Morpurgo to read it, but he he actually had throat cancer not that long ago, and he doesn't read any books now, so he wasn't able to do it, and they never asked anyone else, which is a bit sad. I think that is the link. Just going to check it works. Yeah, it does. That is the link.
Thank you. I look on Kindle. I read all my books on Kindle.
Yeah, Jonathan listens to all his books on audio now. But yeah, Kindle's great, isn't it? Because you can change the font size and the spacing and all of that.
Thank you. You're an inspiration.
Thank you.
Dean, you've got a question.
Yeah, just unmuting myself there before I start. Yeah, I just wanted to ask Jonathan, did you say that when you were at school, they identified you as having profound multiple learning difficulties?
Yeah.
Because I've actually worked with students who have severe learning difficulties and PMLD, and I think in Jonathan's case, that's an absolute disgrace. I mean, why did they not pick up on his intelligence and your intelligence, Jonathan? He's a very articulate person.
But there are lots of others, but there are lots of others.
Sorry, we've got a dog pounding at the door over here.
That's why I started. Is that why you started Teach Us To? Jonathan said, but there are lots of others. That's why I started Teach Us To.
Yes, yeah, it's just everything he's written, and the stuff that you've written, Jonathan, is just wonderful, and it's really, really been really good, and nice to have you along tonight.
I'm just checking if there are any other questions. Oh, Tony.
Yeah, I'm just gonna
Otherwise, I was going to ask a question, but I don't want to jump ahead.
No, you go first.
No, Tony, you go first.
Okay.
It's fine.
I was wanting to know how Jonathan is of his impact on other people.
How
aware is he of his impact on other people?
do you think your impact on other people? Is it how do you view your impact on other people?
No, how aware.
Aware.
How aware are you of your impact on other people? To go. Jonathan said, I try, but there's a long way to go. I think especially from his charity point of view, there's an awful lot of children who've got PMLD who just aren't taught anything. They're not taught, they're not even exposed really to literature or taught to read and write, because the assumption is that they look like Jonathan does in a wheelchair and non-verbal.
Yeah, well, I like a different question, and I guess it's one that I find hard to answer myself, but I'm very aware that Jonathan had a very profound impact on other people. And I have a very good example of this because, as you might know, I live in Upper Basildon, which is where your grandparents used to live. And that's how I was very amused when you talk about your grandfather in your book and how excited he got because he had something to talk to you about, especially when he was a linguist and he himself loved language. And it was that he shared with Jonathan. And I was very aware of how his grandfather changed because when I've been here for 20 years and I found his grandfather could be very standoffish. And I remember meeting him in the local surgery once, and he told me the time in a way, and he listened in a way which I found quite extraordinary compared to how he was before. And it is interesting how you can have a very profound impact on people without really being aware of it, or not necessarily being aware of it.
I'm sorry, Tony. I don't know why, but sometimes when people are talking towards the end of what they're saying, we just can't. It's just like the sound dips out. Is anyone else having that problem?
Well, I'm sorry about. I was starting then from the beginning.
So we could hear the bit about you talking about how Jonathan's grandfather changed in his in his interactions with Jonathan.
Well, we didn't really. Because I know his grandfather, because he lived in Upper Basildon.
Oh, you know him. Oh, okay. Oh, I missed that. We missed that bit. You know his grandpa, Jonathan. Sorry, Tony, I missed that crucial bit at the end. Yes.
Because I remember he was quite difficult. He was naturally quite standoffish. But I remember meeting him in his surgery about 3 or 4 years ago. And he listened in a very different way and gave me the time that he wouldn't have done before. And I'm very aware that Jonathan has had a very well for how his behavior seems to have changed enormously because of Jonathan.
Tony, that makes me so happy. Oh, that is such a lovely story. Who knew we were going to come on today and hear that? Jonathan, have you got anything to say to Tony? I'm glad I asked him to repeat so we could hear it all. I'm so happy. I'm so happy he gave you time. Jonathan said, I'm so happy he gave you time.
Yeah. Yes, his whole attitude seems not because I only see him very rarely. It's probably something you don't notice so much when you see him regularly.
Oh, that's
Thank
great.
you, Tony. Thank you. Does anybody else have a question or a comment or something to say, something to share? Or I'll come to I'll come to Becky first, just because she's the easiest to find. Here we go. Oh, you haven't got your camera on, Becky, so I can't spotlight. Oh, you have now. Let me spotlight you. Sorry, I'm not so good on the technicality, being very.
I was just going to ask Jonathan, because I've read the book, and I was and the bit that always really struck me. Obviously, I can be verbal, unlike you, Jonathan, but I was in a mainstream school, and my mother spent a lot of time with the headmaster in the office trying to say she can do stuff, and I spent a lot of time sat outside with a support assistant saying, my mother's going to tell the headmaster that I can do X, Y, and Z. And I see that there was a bit in one of the chapters where you were talking about the fact that you were using your spelling board to tell the support assistant that your mother was in the office with the head teacher telling him you could use a spelling board now and you could spell things. And I just wondered whether you, I suppose I found it quite intimidating at first, but as I got older, I found it quite sort of encouraging and enjoyable, and it gave me a lift when I knew that I had managed to succeed in changing someone's expectations or their thoughts about how something should go, and what they expected this bunch of children or people with this condition to have. And I just wonder whether that was something that you experience or still feel it is good for you.
What that means. Jonathan said, every time I spell to a new person.
Fair enough.
I think his experience is that because if we go anywhere and he meets someone new and they look at him in a wheelchair and he's non-verbal, they will always assume that the way to interact with him is to talk like a toddler. It's fascinating. Even his consultant the other day, he went in and he said, aren't you a big boy? And Jonathan spelt out, I'm in sixth form. It's just like
true.
You can hear you can hear the voice change, you hear everything kind of slightly changes then when you get the spelling board out and Jonathan says something. So yeah, that's what he said.
Thank you.
I can see exactly why.
I can concur, having spent some periods of my life in a wheelchair and some periods of time out of a wheelchair, the difference in communication to me, even just being in a wheelchair rather than standing, is very different. So I can imagine exactly what you describe, Jonathan. Well, not obviously exactly, but very similar. Thank you. Ruth Ann, I'm going to try and find you on my... Let's find Ruth. There we go.
I just want to say thank you for sharing your poem and your story, because it was really good. That's all.
We just thank you. We just said thank you.
I know we've got some other hands up, but there's a comment in the chat that I want to read. Georgia said that she wanted to let Jonathan know that she always felt the same about losing her friends when she went through school, but she couldn't find the words. So it was lovely to have that poem, you know, acknowledge that experience as well.
Thank you.
We can go back to the questions now, Emma, if you want, but I'm not sure.
You okay to take another question, Jamie? Sorry, because I'm looking at Jamie. Jonathan, are you okay to take a question from Jamie?
From Jamie? Yeah.
There we go. I'll find. I will.
Why does it go on? But people don't have the. So Jamie's saying, why in the year 2022 does it still go on that people who need support with communication and learning and stuff are still treated like they don't have the potential? Almost every week, Jamie meets people. He meets people wherever he goes that aren't supported to communicate in the way that they. Other week, I met. You met a retired doctor, a retired GP, who MS, a motor neuron, who was a motor neuron survivor, and they didn't have any kind of communication device or anything. Well, they should really. People should have stuff while they can still function enough to use it, shouldn't they? Really, with a progressive disease, it's shocking, isn't it? I mean, it's more a rhetorical question, isn't it? Because we know Jonathan knows this very, very well. He says you're doing a great job, and you know, yeah, go on.
So are you.
Oh,
Jamie.
That's the aim, all of us together.
Look. Don't laugh at your own joke until you've done it. And I look out. Eyes up. I look out for what? The scooter. What? The Jamie scooter. Live in Wiltshire, I think that would be quite a feat, wouldn't it, Jamie, if you managed to make it down here on your scooter?
Bust him down, bust the scooter down. It's taken a long time. Do you want to
It'll take a long time on a scooter, Jonathan, to come down to Wiltshire from Yorkshire.
Bang. Bang the door then. Bang the done. The more we bang the drum, we've got more hope of getting he's saying we need to bang the drum and keep banging the drum and getting the word out there.
Yeah. Jonathan said yes, louder together.
Absolutely, yeah.
That's definitely our motto.
Thank you, Jonathan. It's lovely to see you as well. And we'll see you soon. And it's not just the shirt that makes you look grown up, it's the fact that you're near 5 years older, I think, than when we last saw you, I think.
Yes.
Thanks. I think everybody, I'm not sure, Mandy, are you waving or do you have another question? And that's fine, I'm just not sure.
I have another question.
Okay, so
it's not a question really, it's more of a comment. When Jonathan's talking about when they see that he's non-verbal, they talk to him like a toddler. Well, I'm in a wheelchair and I'm not non-verbal, and people talk to me like as if I'm dead. They think I'm like, I answered the front door today, and when the lady saw me in a wheelchair, she was talking really loud. So I thought maybe she's deaf. And then I realised she was talking to me loud because she saw my wheelchair and presumed that I was deaf. So and or they talk to my husband or my teenage daughter like as if I'm not there. So I don't know if I don't think it's really to do with the fact that you're non-verbal. I think they just see the wheelchair and make you just make assumptions because they do it to me and I can talk just fine. But last week when I heard you were coming on, I must confess I didn't know what an eye gazer was for you to communicate, so I have been educated as well today and I think you do really good. But just to say that don't let that put you off, and you've got all the words in your head and you can let them out and let people know exactly what you think. And I think it's absolutely fantastic. But thanks very much.
Thank you so much, Mandy. So I'm going to ask just Miriam wanted to make one final comment, I think. Sorry, I've done that wrong. See, I knew I was going to get it wrong.
Well, you've got one of us. We just need the other one.
That's fine.
Okay, there we go. Sorry.
No, it's fine. I wanted to. I think we've heard quite a lot.
We can't hear you. I don't know. It's like some people we can hear, and some people's like sound comes in and out. Sorry, can you
hear me now? Yeah. Can you hear me now? Good. I will speak into the computer. We've heard so much over the questions, people reflecting on their own experience, etc. But I wanted to take it back to the creativity and the depth of the thesaurus that is in Jonathan's brain, that is in your brain, Jonathan. And before you were speaking, before you learned how to talk, I'm just curious as to who your favourite authors or poets were, because the volume of vocabulary you have is phenomenal. So could you possibly recommend your top favourite authors or poets to us?
Top favourite authors and poets. Oh, that's got me thinking. Yeah.
I'll say that when I share my poetry with Jonathan, I don't think I quite cut the list.
Michael. Well, Michael Morpurgo. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, Michael Morpurgo. So Jonathan met him first because he wanted, and that was arranged through Make-A-Wish. He's more of a story writer, isn't he? Any poets? Oh, well. No, I think you're saying mixture, are you? A mixture. Are you worried if you say one person, all your Christmas books will be related to that? Yes. He said a mixture. He's worried about nailing his colours to one mast and all his Christmas books being the same person.
Can I ask another question? Did you read a lot to Jonathan when he was younger, or did you have the Audible books going on in the background, or how did you, before you worked out a system of communicating, how would you share the world of literacy with Jonathan?
Yeah, Jonathan is our first child, and he's got kidney failure. He's had a kidney transplant, but renal children spend like years of their life in hospital, not all at once, but a lot of time in hospital. And he's never particularly enjoyed television. And actually, there wasn't really television when we first. He's 16 now. There wasn't all these channels, and there wasn't CBeebies on demand. It was kind of like, the children's channel came on at sort of after school, 3:30 or something. So we read a lot. People used to just bring bags of books to the hospital, and we'd read our way through them. And then probably much earlier than I did with my two subsequent daughters, possibly because I'd maybe had enough of reading the same kind of, they don't last very long, do they? The toddler books, the small books, they don't last very long. So when he was about 4 or 5, I started reading the Narnia Chronicles to him. And we kind of read, we just sit in hospital and read and read. There was a famous day when we were driving to hospital, and I said, he started reading The Hobbit. And I said, The Hobbit's going to take us a long time to read, because we're reading a little bit before bedtime. I said, I joked and said, what you really need I said, what you really need is to be admitted to hospital. And then blow me down. We're only there for a blood test. And they took his temperature and they said, oh, you're going to have to come in. I was like, I'm never saying that ever again. But then we spent a whole weekend on the adolescent ward reading The Hobbit. I think we'd nearly finished it by the time we came home. So yeah, I have read a lot to Jonathan. And I've got 2 other daughters who are younger than Jonathan, and life's quite busy now. So he tends to spend more time listening to people who are better at reading stories than me than I do to reading to him now. But yeah,
thank you. That explains the phenomenal vocab that he's got. Thank you. Is there anyone else that's got any other comments or?
Can I just ask Tony? Tony, where do you live? Do you still live near my parents? Is he still here?
Yeah, I live in Upper Basildon.
You still live in Upper Basildon?
Yeah,
right.
Because your parents live in Pangbourne.
Yeah, they've moved to Pangbourne, yeah. Or maybe we'll have to look out for you if we're in Pangbourne.
Well, it's funny. My mother had a very good friend of hers called Smee.
Right.
Do you remember Smee?
Do you remember Smee? Chantal, do you remember Smee?
Oh, yes. Yes.
Well,
she's passed away, sadly.
Smee was a great school friend of my mother, and I used to go up to London to see Smee, and she told me, because she knows you and your family very well, she told me about Jonathan, and I remember going to a village fete in 2015, and Jonathan was there.
Oh.
But I was too shy to go up and speak to him.
Oh, well, we'll have to look out for you, Tony, when we're next in Pangbourne.
Well, it'd be wonderful to see you, Jonathan. So please let me know when you are. It'd be really good to have time with him.
That'd be great.
Thanks, Tony. That would be great. It's great to make those connections. It's always fun, isn't it? I just like to. We're coming to the end of the session now. I was just going to use this opportunity to say thank you very, very much for joining us this evening. It's been an incredible evening learning about how you use language creatively, and also how you're using it to change people's opinions, which is, I think, really, really important.
Thank you for having me. And Alaric, yeah, Jonathan said thank you for having me, and thanks to Alaric. I should say Alaric has done a lot of the voiceover, so some of the films you can hear his voiceover, but we've always sent him the script beforehand, and today he was having a look through the script at 5:30, so he's done a great job today, like practically no notice at all. So.
Thank you so very much. We really do appreciate it, and we do really appreciate how much hard work you put into all of your presentations. Thank you to all of you.